When Sergeant Kira Chen receives a distress signal from the brilliant Dr. Marcus Thorne, she thinks she's answering a rescue mission. Instead, she discovers the horrifying truth about humanity's war against alien invaders. They're not aliens at all, they're us. What happens when evolution becomes extinction? Asterisk greetings, travelers of the stars. Tonight's story takes us to the edge of the galaxy where beasts, aliens, and humanity's spirit collide. The blood on Kira's hands had long since dried to rust-colored flakes that crumbled when she flexed her fingers. 3 days since the massacre at Station 7, 3 days since she'd watched her entire unit get torn apart by creatures that shouldn't exist. The abandoned research facility stretched before her like a metal graveyard, its corridors dark save for the sickly yellow glow of emergency lighting. Each footstep echoed with hollow precision, a metronome marking time in a place where time had stopped mattering. She found him in Lab C, hunched over a bank of monitors that cast blue shadows across his gaunt face. Dr. Marcus Thorne. The man whose research had supposedly saved humanity from the first wave of attacks. The man whose name was whispered in reverence across the colonies. The man whose signal had lured her unit into a trap. "You came," he said without turning around, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I wasn't sure you would." Ow! Kira's hand moved instinctively to the plasma pistol at her hip. Your distress beacon was hard to ignore. Was it distress? Marcus finally turned, and Kira's breath caught. His left eye was gone, replaced by a mess of scarred tissue that spoke of recent violence, or bait. The monitors behind him displayed feeds from across the facility, empty corridors, sealed blast doors, and in Lab D, something that made Kira's stomach clench with recognition. Bodies. Dozens of them, ranged in perfect circles like some ritualistic offering. "The Wraith-class entities," she said, her voice steady, despite the ice forming in her veins. "You've been studying them? Studying them?" Marcus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Been talking to them. They're not what we thought. Sergeant Chen, they're not alien at all." The facility's lights flickered, and in that moment of darkness, Kira saw something move in the corridor behind Marcus. Something tall and wrong, with limbs that bent in impossible directions. "They're us," Marcus whispered, his remaining eye wide with a terrible knowledge. "They're what we become when we stop fighting and start listening. And they've been waiting so patiently for you to arrive." The lights went out completely, and in the sudden darkness, Kira heard the sound of claws on metal, growing closer with each heartbeat. The emergency lighting kicked in just as Kira's weapon cleared its holster. The plasma bolt burned through the air where Marcus had been standing, but he was gone. In his place stood one of the creatures, its elongated form barely contained within what had once been a human shape. "Don't." Marcus's voice came from speakers embedded in the walls. "They won't hurt you. Not yet." Kira kept her weapon trained on the thing as it tilted its head with predatory curiosity. Up close, she could see the remnants of a human face beneath, the twisted flesh. The recognition hit her like a physical blow. "Lieutenant Hayes," her voice cracked. "You were at Station 7. The creature that had been Hayes made a sound like static and reached toward her with fingers that had grown too long. Kira stepped back, her finger tightening on the trigger. "He volunteered," Marcus said through the intercom. "They all did, eventually. The transformation isn't violent, Kira. It's liberation." "From what?" "From the lies we've been telling ourselves. About survival." His footsteps echoed from somewhere above. "Follow the blue lights. We need to talk properly." The corridor lit up with a path of azure indicators leading deeper into the facility. Hastings stepped aside, allowing her passage, its hollow eye sockets tracking her movement with unnatural precision. Kira followed the lights, her weapon drawn, her heart hammering against her ribs. The deeper she went, the more she began to notice details that made her skin crawl, scratch marks on the walls that formed patterns too deliberate to be random, sections of flooring that had been carefully removed and replaced, the smell of copper and ozone that spoke of recent experimentation. The path led to an observation deck overlooking the facility's main laboratory. Below, dozens of the creatures moved with purposeful coordination, tending to banks of organic-looking machinery that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Marcus waited for her there, his scarred face illuminated by the glow from below. Beautiful, isn't it? They're growing something? A network. A way for humanity to finally communicate without the barriers of language or culture or fear. They're parasites. Kira's voice was flat with disgust. They turn people into monsters. Is that what you see when you look at them? Marcus moved closer, and she noticed his movements had taken on an odd, flowing quality. Or do you see evolution? He reached toward her, and she saw it then. The skin on his palm had begun to split and reshape itself into something that resembled circuitry. Made of living tissue, you're infected. I'm connected. His remaining eye fixed on hers with desperate intensity. Kira, the war isn't what we thought. We're not fighting for humanity's survival. We're fighting to prevent our transcendence. The creatures below suddenly stopped their work and turned upward as one, their hollow gazes fixed on Kira. In unison, they began to emit a low humming that vibrated through the facility's structure. They're calling to you, Marcus whispered. They've been waiting for someone like you. Someone strong enough to survive the process. Someone who can help them complete their work. Kira backed toward the exit, but the door had sealed itself. The humming grew louder, more insistent, and she felt something responding deep in her mind. A warmth that spread from her thoughts into her nervous system like liquid fire. What did you do to me? She gasped. Marcus smiled, and she saw that his remaining teeth had begun to elongate into something predatory. I didn't do anything. Beacon wasn't just a distress signal, Kira. It was an inoculation, and it's been working on you for 3 days. The warmth in Kira's mind crystallized into something else entirely. Images flooded her consciousness, the first colony ship arriving at this world. The discovery of crystalline structures beneath the planet's surface, and the slow realization that they had found not a new home, but an ancient consciousness waiting to be awakened. Stop it, she snarled, pressing her palms against her temples as the visions intensified. Marcus watched her struggle with something approaching tenderness. The planet isn't dead, Kira. It never was. We've been colonizing a sleeping god, and now it's waking up to defend itself. Through the haze of alien memories, she saw the truth. Of what had happened at Station 7, her unit hadn't been slaughtered by monsters. It had been harvested by something far more intelligent. Something that needed human neural pathways to interface with technology it couldn't otherwise control. You knew? She gasped, looking up at Marcus through eyes that now held flecks of the same bioluminescence she'd seen in the creatures below. You knew this would happen when you sent that beacon, I hoped. He knelt beside her, his transformed hand hovering just above her shoulder. The collective needed someone with your specific neural configuration, someone who had survived prolonged exposure to their influence without losing cognitive function. Kira forced herself to focus, to push back against the alien presence in her mind. What makes me so special? Your childhood trauma. Words hit like a physical blow. The neural pathways carved by extreme stress create unique patterns. Your parents' death in the mining accident, the years in military foster care, the psychological conditioning that made you such an effective soldier, it all prepared your mind for this. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound she'd ever received. He had studied her file, had known exactly what buttons to push to make her respond to his distress call. You son of a bitch. She lunged for him, but her body moved wrong, too slow, as if she were underwater. Marcus caught her wrist easily, his touch sending jolts of alien sensation up her arm. I'm sorry, I truly am. But the transformation is already beginning, and fighting it will only make it more painful. Through the observation windows, she could see more of the creatures ascending from the laboratory levels. They moved with fluid grace, no longer the shambling monsters she'd fought at Station 7. These were different, evolved, perfected. How many colonies? She asked, her voice hollow with the weight of understanding. All of them. The network spans 17 worlds now, and growing. Each new node strengthens the collective consciousness. Marcus's scarred face showed genuine regret. Humanity as a species was never going to survive contact with something this vast. Our only choice was to become part of it. The door unsealed with a pneumatic hiss, and Haze Thing entered, moving with purposeful stride. Behind it came others, creatures that might once have been her squad mates. Their transformed faces barely recognizable but still carrying echoes of people she had known and trusted. The process is accelerating, Marcus observed, watching as veins of dark substance spread up Kira's arms like living tattoos. Your military conditioning is making you more receptive than most. Kira's weapon felt impossibly heavy in her grip. She raised it anyway, knowing it was futile but unable to surrender without a fight. There has to be a way to stop this. Marcus stepped between her and the advancing creatures. But it would require destroying the network's primary node, the original consciousness that's been orchestrating everything. He paused, meeting her increasingly alien gaze. It would mean killing everyone who's already been transformed, including me. The plasma pistol trembled in her hands as she processed the implications. Genocide in the name of preserving humanity. The destruction of hundreds of thousands of minds that had found something approaching peace in their transformation. Where? She whispered. Marcus smiled with what remained of his humanity. The mining platform where your parents died. The accident wasn't an accident, Kira. They found the heart of it all, buried 3 kilometers down in the planetary core. And you're the only person alive who knows how to navigate those tunnels. The journey to mining platform Omega took 18 hours through tunnels that Kira had spent 15 years trying to forget. Marcus sat beside her in the transport, his transformation progressing with each passing hour. His remaining eye had clouded over with the same bioluminescent film she'd seen in the others. But his speech remained clear, almost unnaturally so. Tell me about them, he said as they descended deeper into the planetary crust. Your parents? Kira kept her eyes fixed on the tunnel walls rushing past. Why? So you can use it against me? Because I want to understand what drives someone to choose extinction over evolution? His voice carried genuine curiosity, no longer entirely human, but not yet fully alien. The collective shows me their memories sometimes. They were brilliant engineers. They would have made beautiful contributions to our expanded consciousness. They would have hated what you've become. The transport shuddered as they passed through a particularly unstable section of tunnel. Ancient mining charges had left. The rock fractured and prone to collapse, but Kira navigated the hazards with muscle memory that predated her military training. The network is trying to influence you, Marcus observed, watching her hands move across the controls with inhuman precision. You're already part of it, whether you accept that or not. She could feel it too. The alien presence in her mind had grown stronger, offering her glimpses of vast computational matrices and interconnected consciousness that spanned star systems. The temptation to simply let go and allow herself to be absorbed was becoming harder to resist. How do I destroy it? She asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried harmonics that resonated through her. Bones. The primary node is biological. Crystalline organism that's been growing in the planetary core for millions of years. It feeds on neural energy and uses it to reach across space to other worlds, other potential hosts. Nuclear charges wouldn't penetrate deep enough. The organism has defenses that could deflect most conventional weapons. He turned to look at her, and she saw that his face had begun to restructure itself around non-human geometries. There's another way. The node is vulnerable to neural feedback. A massive overload of conflicting signals could cause it to collapse inward. Kira understood immediately. A psychic suicide bomb. The transformer would have to maintain their individuality while allowing their consciousness to be fully absorbed by the network. Then, at the moment of complete integration, they would have to assert their human identity with enough force to create a cascade failure, and they would die. Everything connected to the network would die. Every transformed human across 17 colonies. Every mind that had found peace in the collective. Marcus reached out and touched her arm with fingers that had grown too long and too sharp, including me. The platform came into view ahead of them, its massive bulk suspended over a shaft that plunged into the planet's molten heart. Emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red angles, and the air thrummed with barely contained energy that made Kira's teeth ache. As they docked, she realized the platform wasn't empty. Dozens of the transformed beings moved through the corridors with purposeful coordination, tending to machinery that pulsed with the same organic rhythm she'd seen at the research facility. "They know we're here," Marcus said unnecessarily. "They've been preparing for this moment since the network first detected your neural signature." Kira checked her weapon one final time, knowing it would be useless against so many opponents. "Why are you helping me destroy something you believe in?" Marcus smiled with what remained of his human features. "'Cause I love you." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What? I've been connected to your mind for 3 days, Kira? I've seen every memory, felt every emotion you've ever experienced. The loneliness you carry like armor, the way you push people away because losing them hurts too much. The dreams you have about your parents, where they're still alive and proud of what you've become." His transformed hand found hers. "I love all of it. The parts that are beautiful and the parts that are broken. That's not love," she whispered. "That's violation. Or is it the only honest relationship you've ever had?" He stood as the transport finished docking. "I'm going to give you a choice, Kira. You can destroy the network and condemn billions of minds to death, including mine. Or you can join us willingly and help us build something better than humanity ever was alone." The platform's blast doors opened, revealing a corridor lined with beings that had once been human. They watched her with hollow, glowing eyes, their faces serene with the peace of absolute certainty. At the end of the corridor, something vast and alien pulsed with light that seemed to come from another dimension entirely. The primary node, the heart of everything that had gone wrong with human expansion into the galaxy. And walking toward them through the transformed crowd, her face bright with inhuman joy, was Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, still recognizably herself, despite the changes, still carrying the crooked smile that had gotten her through basic training. "Kira," she called out in a voice like crystalline chimes. "You made it. We've been waiting for you to come home." The primary node filled the chamber like a living mountain, its crystalline surface pulsing with patterns of light that spoke directly to the visual cortex. Kira could feel its attention pressing against her mind, vast and patient and utterly alien in its benevolence. Hayes stood before it, her transformed features radiant with contentment. "It doesn't hurt, Kira. The fear you carry, the guilt over your parents, the isolation that's defined your entire life. It all disappears when you stop fighting and let yourself become part of something larger." Marcus moved to stand beside her, his own transformation nearly complete. Only his voice remained recognizably human. "The choice is yours." Quickly, the network won't wait much longer. Through her neural link with the collective, Kira could sense the vast scope of what they had built. 17 colonies, hundreds of thousands of minds linked in perfect harmony. Working together toward goals that transcended individual survival, there was genuine beauty in it. Peace she had never known was possible. "And yet, show me my parents," she said quietly. The node's light intensified, and suddenly she was 8 years old again, standing in the mining platform's observation deck as her parents prepared for their final descent. She watched her father check and recheck the drilling equipment while her mother ran calculations on her handheld computer. But this time she could see what the child version of herself had missed. The way their eyes had grown distant in the weeks leading up to the accident. The strange marks that had appeared on their skin. The way they had spoken in perfect unison when they thought she wasn't listening. They were already connected. She breathed. "Yes," Marcus confirmed. They discovered the node and allowed themselves to be absorbed willingly. The mining accident was staged to prevent colonial authority investigation. But they died. Their bodies died. Their consciousness joined something eternal. Hayes reached toward her with transformed hands. "They're still here, Kira, part of the network. You could see them again." For a moment, the temptation was overwhelming. Let go of the pain and isolation that had defined her existence. Become part of something that promised an end to loneliness and fear. To see her parents again, even if only as echoes within an alien mind. But then she remembered Marcus's words about choice. About the billions of minds that would be condemned to absorption without consent if the network continued to spread. About species across the galaxy that would never have the option she was being offered. "I'm sorry," she whispered, and meant it. Kira opened her mind fully to the network, allowing her consciousness to flow toward the primary node. The sensation was indescribable, like falling upward into infinite light. She felt Marcus's presence alongside her, his love and regret intertwining with her own resolve. At the moment of complete integration, when her individual identity was about to dissolve into the collective whole, Kira Chen asserted herself with every fiber of human stubbornness she possessed. The feedback tore through the network like a sonic weapon. She felt the connection severing, the shared consciousness fragmenting back into individual minds that suddenly found themselves alone and terrified. Across 17 worlds, the transformed began to collapse as their neural pathways overloaded. Marcus's hand found hers in the chaos, his grip anchoring her to something real as the node began to implode. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely audible over the sound of crystalline structure tearing itself apart. "For what?" "For choosing to be human." The explosion that followed reduced the mining platform to component atoms. But in the final, moments before her consciousness scattered into the cosmic background radiation, Kira thought she felt something else. Two familiar presences, her parents' minds finally freed from an alien dream, welcoming her home. The rescue teams found nothing but empty colonies and the scattered remains of mining platform Omega. In the official reports, it was listed as a catastrophic system failure that had somehow triggered sympathetic collapses across multiple worlds. But in the deepest archives of colonial authority, there remained a single file marked with Kira Chen's identification number. A record of 17 worlds saved by one woman's refusal to let go of what made her human. The end.